stakes are high and needs are more complex when running an established consumer products brand. You've got mounting pressures across multi-channel sales, complex supply chains, inventory across multiple warehouses, and leadership needs fast, accurate data to make decisions. That's why leading brands partner with Baker Tilly, an accounting firm that specializes in the consumer product space. Their team understands the unique challenges of scaling product-based businesses, whether it's navigating transactions confidently, sales tax compliance, integrating ERP systems like NetSuite, or predictive analytics. Baker Tilly delivers. Discover how Baker Tilly's industry-focused services can help elevate your business. Visit bakertilly.com.
You get as old as I am, your CV gets long. It starts to look like the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've been doing this a long time. The other company that I'm super proud of is my sons and I. We started APL, so my sons are the co-founders. So we make luxury performance athletic footwear. So it's really, we're like the Ferrari of the sneaker industry. It's really fun and big, doing an amazing job running that company, and it's been a lot of fun. So my presentation today, because this is a CEO conference, this is a CEO presentation. Yes, I'm the executive chairman of the Beachbody Company. It's a public company. It's a turnaround. We've done an amazing job there, but that's not what I'm here to talk specifically about. I am in the process of working on another book, and what you're going to see today is what I call sort of the CEO prescription. I wrote a book many years ago called The Turnaround Prescription. And when I was at Odyssey Partners, which was a private equity firm many years ago, we invented sort of the prepackaged bankruptcy turnaround. You would take these fallen icons, restructure them, fix them, and take them public. And I wrote a book, and the book is a blueprint. And it basically shows symptoms of companies that need a turnaround, and then prescriptions on what to do to fix them. And so I've been practicing that, throughout my career. I've been a CEO. It's funny, because I was 31 when I first became a CEO of a public company. I've been a CEO for 40 years. It's kind of crazy to think back on it now. It's kind of like the Macaulay Culkin movie, Richie Rich. It's what I felt like. My CFO was older than my parents. My general counsel was, and luckily they didn't send me to my room and things didn't go well in the company. But it's been a long run, and I've managed to glean a lot as the world has become so advanced from a technological standpoint. Back in the days when I was running Fabergé, we didn't have computers on the desk. The cell phone had just come out. We were writing documents and sending them through routing memos through a company. And somehow we managed to make a fortune and run great companies. And what you started to learn was it's all about the people. People adapt. People are very malleable. And the notion that things like artificial intelligence are going to replace people, that's ridiculous. It's just going to change what you manage. You're going to manage systems and machines to do things that people may have done before, but nonetheless, you will still need people to do them. So what I'm going to do today, I hope if I can make the clicker work with my 140 patents, one of them is not on clickers, is I'm going to show you essentially my perspective, and what I would call this my stress test for CEOs. And again, my goal here today is to give you take-home value. I hate wasting people's time. Everybody's got a lot to do. Your guys' presentation, by the way, was phenomenal. So congratulations to you two. You guys are going places. And David, yours, having been in the restaurant business, unfortunately, I understand what it takes to do that, and you're doing a remarkable job there. So with an iconic brand. But the stress test essentially is if you're a CEO, whether you want to be one or you're already a CEO, to me, this is your checklist. How do you know that you can lead people? How do you know that you can lead a business? Do you know how to engage a management team? Are you a delegator or are you an abdicator? And they're not the same. So if you think about the term president, what does it mean? You preside. It doesn't mean that you don't do any work. It's like, imagine if you had a coach and he says, I want you to do 50 push-ups. And the coach is out there doing the push-ups with you. You're not wondering why he or she is telling you to do something that they're not going to do. So in a company, when you're a CEO, your people have to know that you're the fireball relief pitcher. They may not need to call you in the game, but if they do, they got to know that you're a superstar and you can help them solve their problems. So your job as a CEO essentially is to remove obstacles. You build a great management team. Hopefully you go in a meeting and they show you things and you go, wow, this is great. Let's go do it. Best meeting of the day. The worst meetings of the day when you look at something and you go, oh my God, we can't do this. So let's sit here as a bunch of smart folks and figure it out. So that is delegating. Abdicating is, I hired you to do the job, go do the job. If it doesn't work, we'll get somebody else to do it. That's not being a CEO. And it really is something that gets lost on people, because when you start your career and you move up the ranks, if you're a great marketer or a great finance person or a great operations person, the hardest thing when you become a CEO is that your go-to-war skill is no longer what you do every day. You're now in charge of the whole kit and caboodle. Whereas you were coming up and you were the star of a discipline, that's how you got that job. And so you got to be careful when you get that job that you don't become the chief marketing officer, the chief financial officer, because you got one of those. So you need to be the coach to help them do a better job. And it's very, very difficult. Most people fail in their first CEO job, almost without exception. They don't fail necessarily because their company fails. They fail. They were not a good CEO because they didn't figure out how to do it. So I have something I always believe in. For those of you who run companies, I do everything in fives. If you have more than 5 things on your list, they're not going to get done. It's just the way it works. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many resources in a company. If you have more than 5 things, it's a beautiful list, and they won't get done. So what I do is I break it down. So to me, and I put this in my book into chapters, it's called your go-to-war skill. What is your go-to-war skill? We declare World War III tomorrow. What do you do better than anybody else? I mean, I've been running companies for decades, restructuring. My go-to-war skill, even though some people would say financial architecture, is marketing. You know, I've invented billions of dollars worth of products. That doesn't mean I'm the chief marketing officer. But that's my go-to-war skill. And if you need my help, I'm there. You need my help in finance, I'm there. You need my help in operations, I'm there. But my go-to-war skill, I got to pick one. Same thing here. If you say the CEO, my job is I'm the conductor of the orchestra. A CEO is a conductor. What happens if the oboe player calls in sick on the night of the LA Philharmonic? What do? You got to be able to sit in and play the oboe. Now, you may not play it as well as the oboe player, but you got to do it without anybody noticing a hiccup. That's being a conductor of an orchestra. When I was at United Online, my CFO was out with back surgery for over a year. So I had to be the CEO and the CFO while I did the acquisition at FTD, the big flower company, for United Online. So I'm doing an acquisition, running a public company as a CEO, and my CFO, bless his heart, was a great guy, was out for almost a year. But I had to know how to do that. Wasn't fun, but as a CEO, that's where you got to step in. Third thing is, you are the capital custodian of the company. It's like what David was talking about. That's your job. You basically have this bucket of capital, and you got to figure out where you're going to allocate that capital in each particular juncture of the company, because it will change. The priorities change. Some things are designed to be growth elements, some are designed to be cash cow elements, some are designed to be milk elements where I'm just not going to put any money into them. That's your job. The fourth thing is, you got to master what I've invented as a term called the leverage spectrum, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But there's all kinds of leverage beyond financial leverage. And as a CEO, you've got to learn what that means. And then the last is your job, public or private. I've been running public companies for decades, but also privates, is you must unlock value for your stakeholders. That's your job. You have to be the guy or the gal who creates value. So I took these 5 things and broke them out. So what is your go-to-war skill? And you think about it. Your go-to-war skill is your aptitude in a particular area that is unquestionable. And so when you're in a room with your management team, they need to know, and whether you're running the Ford Motor Company or Chuck E. Cheese or the Beachbody, it doesn't matter. They need to know that when the fire drill hits, our chief firemen or firewoman has this skill and they will help us get out of this. And if you're not up for that, don't be a CEO. It's really important because you're a player coach. You're not a sideline coach. You're a player coach. And so the go-to-war skill is a critical thing for you to assess in terms of your own arsenal. The second thing is this conductor concept. I mean, if you think about it, you guys remember when you were in school and they would give you these novels to read and then they had these things called Cliff Notes? Well, if we're being truthful, and I was lucky, I was a good student, I was blessed with a photographic memory when I was born. So I didn't do anything to get it. I was just born with it. So I didn't read a lot of books. I read a lot of Cliff Notes. And I was a really good writer. And I got A's on my exams. And the reality of it was, I mean, I might have read 10 of the books of the 50 that we were supposed to read. I read Monarch Notes and I read Cliff Notes. What did I get out of that? I got the gist of the story so I could creatively write about it. Nobody just wanted you to spit back the facts. Well, when you're the CEO, you're the Cliff Notes. Your individual discipline heads, they're the book. So your CFO should know a hell of a lot more about the finances and the details than you do. But you got the Cliff Notes. And you might keep adding to the Cliff Notes, but that's how you have to run a company. A little dashboard with key performance indicators. That's how you fly an airplane. You don't have time to go through the whole manual at 37,000 feet with the Rockies Front Range in front of you. You needed to do that before you took off. So when you're in flight, you're flying with the Cliff Notes. And that's really important for people to understand. In terms of the custodian of capital, look at this. So you've got currency capital, which is money. You have intellectual capital, which is your patents, your trademarks, your special formulas. You've got human capital. You've got institutional capital or industrial capital. And then you've got the goodwill capital. What is the goodwill capital? It's the value of your brand. So companies have a book value, and then they got a goodwill value. So sometimes you'll see companies will sell for incredible multiples, huge prices. You're like, I don't get it. The company didn't seem big enough to do it. Tremendous goodwill value. The value of that brand and that franchise is the biggest part of the value equation in a company. So this is something that I created, and it's called the leverage spectrum. And it's for CEOs. So basically, you got financial leverage, which you know what that is, that's debt. So I used to, when I was in business school at the Kellogg School, when Abraham Lincoln was president, I wrote a paper that almost got me booted out of my finance class. And the dean of the Kellogg School was the legendary Don Jacobs, who was also the chairman of the World Bank. And I wrote a paper that said leverage and debt are not the same thing, which is heresy. Because leverage is debt. But my contention was it wasn't. And my contention was when you've got your own money and you can get somebody else's money cheaply, what have you done with your own money? You've leveraged it. You leveraged it so someone else would give you money because you've got your own. When you don't have a dime to make a phone call and you need money to run your business, that's debt. So you don't have your own money. You are desperate to get other people's money, and it costs you more because you're a bigger what? You're a bigger risk. So the notion of leverage is that you're taking the asset of your company and you're using that to get other people to loan you money. It's like a home equity loan. You're leveraging the value of your asset, as opposed to saying, I need to get a loan to just exist in my life because I have no money. That's debt. So that's the financial leverage. Operating leverage is, as David was explaining, operating leverage is I got an overhead level, I have a revenue level. Once I cover my overhead, all of the incremental revenue that I generate beyond that flows through to the bottom line. Because I don't have to pay the salaries, I don't have to pay the rent, I've already paid all that. So the next product I sell, I got my gross margin on the product and the rest of it goes to the bottom line. So you'll see companies where their revenue will go up 20% and their profit will go up 100%. And that's because of operating leverage. Third thing is brand leverage. What brands do you have? Are you getting the maximum out of them? Can you extend those brands? Line extend them, license them, take them into different categories? IP leverage. You own a portfolio of patents, trademarks. The value of that is incredible. Some companies will sell their patent portfolios for $1 million to $2 million a patent. They didn't even know they had the value there. There's companies like AT&T, for example. They have thousands and thousands of patents. The value of that portfolio is enormous. Manpower leverage. How do you get the most out of your people? That is critical. That's a key part of being a CEO. And then market leverage, which is, are we positioned right in the marketplace? Is the market getting our story? And if they are, how do I leverage that? How do I look like the first mover, the market leader, the innovator? Because people will follow you. Financial institutions will want to loan you money. People will want to come work with you. JVs and partners will want to be your collaborator. So market leverage is critical. And these are the things that as a CEO, if you're sitting down every day, you got to be thinking about. And then the last thing is obviously unlocking value. And there's tons of ways to unlock value in a company. But in the end of the day, companies usually trade at either a multiple of revenues, which is usually companies that don't make money, multiple of EBITDA, or some combination thereof. Or they trade at a value which is the I gotta have it value. So sometimes a company will look at a build versus buy analysis and say, I gotta have that company. When Facebook bought Instagram, 12 people, I gotta have that company. And now it's the biggest value driver of that entire business. When Microsoft decided they wanted to get into video conferencing, what did they buy? Skype. It was pre-Zoom, but they bought Skype because they felt in order for them to get into that, they needed to buy their way in. And you get rewarded for creating that value. So when people say to me, well, you've been a CEO for decades, what's the best way for us to measure the value of a CEO? You know, how does a board or a shareholder base evaluate a CEO? This is my checklist. The number one job you have as a CEO is what's your return on equity? People invest in your company, what kind of return are they getting? What's your return on your assets? Do you have any organic growth? In the retail business, we always used to talk about comp store sales. Anybody can open new stores and get growth. What happened to the stores that you already opened? Are they going up or are they going down? Because if they're not going up, you don't have organic growth. Anybody can build new stores if they have enough capital. Continuous operational improvement. I'm always all over this. Can you get more out of this business in terms of that P&L without having a noticeable difference in performance? Management and employee retention. You talked about this. I mean, we were in the tech industry. Tech industry's got 20 to 25% turnover. We had 1.7% at United Online for 15 years. That's the thing I was the most proud of. Your management is your archival value of your company. Companies are just people. So in the end of the day, nobody who runs Coca-Cola today invented Coca-Cola, but they're running it. And if they don't do a good job, they could run it into the ground. So the value of your manpower is critical. Your diversification of beta is enormous because every company's got risk. It's called beta. How do you diversify and lower the beta of the company? If you lower the beta of the company, it's a safer asset. And then innovation. This is obviously my hot button because that's what I do. But if your company doesn't have innovation and you decide it's just going to be a profit machine, that's great. But sooner or later, that will be up. You can't keep doing that forever. At some point, you've got to innovate, and that's reflected in market share. So what's happened to your market share while you've had the company? If the market share hasn't gone up, then that's a barometer of what the future is going to hold for your company. So I created this profit blueprint, which is how can you power up your profits in the world we're living in today for the next decade. So you have to look at, your organization, your management, your strategy, your financial operations, your analytics, and say to yourself, how am I going to maximize my profit over the next decade? So the long-standing business structure that we all grew up in, that's going to go away. These standard org charts, that's not the way the world's going to be working. Artificial intelligence is going to take care of that. So you got to be aware of that. If you're going to run yourself in the old method, you will become a dinosaur overnight. So you're going to see a flattening of the hierarchy. This is the table with people with seats at the table. And this is not all people in the C-suite. This is people who bring relevant knowledge to the task at hand. So think about companies are going to be structured like SWAT teams, as opposed to these big monolithic organizations. They're going to be more nimble. A lot of people are working remotely, and they're going to be using dynamics like artificial intelligence, etc., to make things go quicker. So this is the old model. This intransigent C-suite, operations, finance. This is what we all grew up in and how most companies are structured. The thing on the right is what's going to change a lot of that, which is the gig force. So you've heard of the gig economy. The gig economy is a nice way of saying outside talent, consultants, agencies, freelancers, people who are not employees on the payroll. That's where a big part of the remote world economy is going to go. So if you're a CEO and you look at what I just talked about, your biggest dilemma is which of these do you do? Do you take the lower risk, lower capital outlay, slower growth approach? Nothing wrong with that, but then you're going to run sort of a cash cow kind of a business. Or do you take the higher risk, greater speed, higher growth approach, which could go wrong? And you got to be up for that. And I was never worried about that. I wasn't going to be defined by what I was doing in any particular job. I built a reputation. I hope that this works. I'm going to do my best. If it doesn't, well, then I'll fall off the ladder and get back on it. If it's the bottom of the ninth inning and we're up by a run and the bases are loaded, I want you to hit me the ball. I want the ball. I don't care if I make an error, so I'll get you next time. But if you're going to be devastated by making an error or striking out, don't play ball. I had teammates that were more talented than I was who did not want the ball in the bottom of the ninth inning. They did not want to deal with this Little League. You know, all the parents, everybody's watching, the kids, okay, you strike out, so what? I'll get you tomorrow. You strike out and you're going to cry in the car on the way home and not want to play baseball anymore, that's fine, then don't play baseball. You picked the wrong sport. It is a sport of failure. It's my sport. It is a sport of failure. You're a superstar if you bat 300. The other 7 times you failed. What can you do in your life with a 30% hit rate and go to the Hall of Fame? But it builds character. And so, to me, and this is critical, there is a cost to being inefficient in running a company. There is a greater cost in being left behind. And most CEOs don't see this until they're out of their jobs. So my view is with interest rates being where they are, the tariff environment, all the uncertainty and everything going on, what you're going to see in the next 3 years is a ton of collaborations that are going to drive growth. A lot of people are going to be moving towards JVs and strategic alliances instead of outright exit. Cost of capital right now is too high. You know, we're in a borderline recessionary environment. We don't know what the economic impact is going to be over the next several months. Interest rates are elevated, so people have a high cost of capital, which usually inhibits acquisitions, because the higher your cost of capital, the higher your hurdle rate, the harder it is to get your internal rate of return, so you tend not to make acquisitions. That's usually what happens. So what do? You do joint ventures, you do strategic alliances, and you work together with other companies to leverage your respective advantages so that you can benefit each other. And that usually leads to an acquisition down the road. It's kind of a try before you buy. And so this is I've been doing this for decades. My big thing is, it's like your body. I train 2.5, it's ironic, I'm the executive chairman of Beachbody Company. I train 2.5 hours a day. I've been doing it every day for decades. No matter where I am in the world, that's what I do. And my feeling is you have 34 trillion cells in your body. You cannot control 34 trillion cells. You can control the controllables. You can control your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your blood sugar, your mental attitude. You can control all that. You can't control cell division. and things that happen. So control the controllable. Same thing in running a business. And stuff happens. Tariffs, climate change, natural disasters, whatever. You can't control that. But you can control your controllables, which is what's on your dashboard that you have at your desk every day. So to me, people are going to be utilizing the gig economy to shift to more variable expenses. This is how you make money. You want to take as much of your P&L as possible and turn it into a variable expense. If you have a high fixed cost, this intransigent burden leads to layoffs. It leads to all kinds of problems. So what you do is you pay a higher marginal cost when you outsource and you use variable expenses. But if your business takes a downturn, you just pull back on the outside resources. You're not laying people off. And so you keep the core proprietary functions in-house. Everything else that's a commodity function, you farm it out. And you put it on a dial that you can turn up or down. This is the thing that most CEOs and teams don't realize. If I say to you that my average employee makes $125,000 a year, that is a false statement. Because you got to add on the 30% benefits, T&E, yeah. So they're not really making $125,000, they're making $156,000 a year. Well, guess what? Outside people have none of that 30% burden. So in essence, you could spend money and get 30% more manpower on the same expense utilizing a gig approach. Think about it. So essentially, this is something people don't really look at. And I've been looking at it for years because this is where companies get in trouble. Data science. You can't read anything today without reading about data science or artificial intelligence. Obviously, this is the future. There's no denying that. But the question is, how is it going to play out? So we were talking about this earlier. This is how it's going to play out. It's going to require vastly different skills, and we're going to change the way we train executives and the way we manage people. Because a lot of the functions will now be done through AI. So you're going to be managing people who are managing AI, as opposed to them being the generators of the information themselves. It's going to be a completely different kind of a skill set. So I created this exercise that's going to be in my book that I think every CEO in the world ought to do. I do it all the time. And some people get uncomfortable when I show this, but that's okay. You should basically go back to your businesses as soon as you get out of this conference, and you should do a simulated acquisition of your own company. So take yourself out of the CEO role and say, I am buying my company. If I'm buying this company with my own money, what would I do to make this company better? And a lot of people, talk about this, but they don't really want to deal with the reality of it. So it's like, what would you do with a clean slate? No sacred cows, no relatives, no best friend. Clean slate. You just became the new coach of the Chicago Bears. It doesn't matter who was on the roster last year. You got a clean slate, Ben Johnson. Keep them, trade them, cut them, draft them. Don't care. It's your responsibility to win, and I'm not forcing you to take anyone. That is a huge thing. The other thing is, and I always do this, is the role playing. You got to identify your vulnerability. So you got to act like you're a competitor to your company. And if you were the competitor, how would you attack your business? You got to be really smart about this. Like, who's competing with you? How would they attack you? Where are you vulnerable? So I would say if your business isn't broken, break it. In the model. Break it. And then fix it. And find out how to do it. So I created what's called the Goldstone Reinvention Matrix. And it's broken into strategic, managerial, and financial. And these are things that you got to ask yourself. Does your strategy fit the market you're in today? What's your competitive advantage? Do you have a unique selling proposition? Do you have price stability? The next generation of your product or service, is that ready to roll? Has it been developed? Have you thought about it? How do you create a strategy for international? Have you identified the partners and the JVs and the alliances that you're probably going to need to grow your company? And then managerially, Would you hire all the members of your team again in a clean slate exercise? That's a tough one. You don't want to ask yourself that question because you got a lot of dead wood in companies, and if you were going to start over, very likely you would not hire a lot of those people. Is your org structure aligned with the business that you're going to become, or is it aligned with the business you are today? Same thing with your CapEx. Are you spending money on CapEx for things that I've got right now, where the life of the machinery that I'm going to buy is longer than the life of the strategy that I'm going to execute? That's a problem. You know what you do in that case? Outsource. That's when you decide to outsource. Same thing in terms of your functions. Which functions should be part of the company going forward? Which parts should be outsourced from the company? These are really critical things. And then financially, are you generating organic revenue growth? Meaning, is the business that you've got today, is it growing, or do you have to open new businesses to show growth? The second thing is, have you determined what the ROI goals are for every initiative? When I run a business, every dollar that we spend has an ROI attached to it. Because otherwise it gets lost in total ROI. So what you want to look at is what's called marginal return on investment. Everything has its own P&L. What's the direct product contribution of everything that you do? And then what's the level of flow through? And you talked about this, Dave. Flow through is critical. So when I covered my overhead, and now I can go get growth, my flow through is where I make all the money. Do you have debt? Can your CapEx align with the future needs of your business? And then lastly, have you computed your customer acquisition cost and the lifetime value of your customer? Because that's your return on investment. How much money is it costing you to get a customer? And what's the lifetime value? And if you can't do that on a regular basis and you're successful, it's not sustainable. You were lucky. This is a big part of how people have to look at running a business. And then the last thing I have is, I don't know why this thing's on screen here, Sean.
No, that's my bad. We're fixing it right now.
Okay. And then the last thing is just basically I've got a top 10 thing for how you as a CEO can go about either growing your business or managerial effectiveness and managing your future profitability. So I have, again, these are all in fives. It's Goldstone fives. I always do things in these fives. And if you look at your business and you try to analyze what you would do going forward, if you want to maximize your effectiveness as a CEO, you're looking at your go-to-war skill, you're looking at your capital allocation, you're looking at how you're managing your leverage spectrum and how you're going to unlock value. But if you're going to maximize future profitability, what you really have to look at is a clean slate exercise, which is what we just talked about, how you're controlling your controllables, are you outsourcing commodity functions, and do you undertake what I would call value engineering? So value engineering is where you take a product or a service and you reduce its cost without any perceivable reduction in the visual or the functional aspect of that product or service. So you found a way to do everything you were doing before cheaper. So if I were to take a Coca-Cola can, if I could lower the density of the aluminum, if I could make the pop top have a thinner material but still open, or I could increase the concavity at the bottom of the can so that I could have a taller can with the same fluid ounces, I've engaged in value engineering. I haven't changed the taste, I haven't changed the look, I haven't changed the product integrity, but I've managed to do it better and more and less expensive. That's value engineering. It's a critical part of any company, especially a company that's not growing. Because if you're not growing, you have to value engineer, or ultimately the posse will catch up with you. So that's my blueprint. If you're a CEO, this kind of stuff is invaluable. If you're not a CEO and you want to become one, come on in, the water's warm. This is what it's like. You know, it's funny, I've been flying on airplanes since I've been 5 years old. And for years, we were fortunate enough to have private airplanes that we would fly on in our companies, and sometimes it would be only me, and I'd go up to the cockpit, and I'd just watch what the guys were doing. And it just didn't look that hard. And it really just doesn't look that hard. So a few years ago, a friend of mine was the president of a company called NetJets in Columbus, Ohio, which is a huge private aircraft company. So they have a simulator there for a Gulfstream, for a G550. So I was out there, and he said to me, Mark, would you like to try the simulator? I said, sure. I mean, I thought it was like a freaking video game. And I go, and this thing's like $20 million. It's unbelievable. And you sit in the cockpit, and it's like a real airplane, and the simulation is 100% real. And he said, pick an airport. So I picked San Francisco, because you have to come in and land over the water. So he said, I'm gonna let you fly and show you what to do. So he gave me about an hour tutorial, and then I did it. And he's in the co-pilot seat, and he was also a pilot. So we're coming in, and he puts this thing called wind shear on, or something. The freaking plane's going like this, and he's telling me what to do. And I said, do me a favor, Bill, don't let me crash this plane. He goes, Mark, it's a simulator. I said, no, I don't want to crash the airplane. If it looks like I'm going to crash the plane, you take over the controls. I just don't want to do that. And when we finally landed, I was kind of like perspiring a little bit. And he said to me, what's up? I said, I cannot believe how hard this is. He says, what do you mean? I said, I've been watching guys in the cockpit for years. It just doesn't look that hard. He said, yeah, well, Hank Aaron didn't make it look like it was very hard to hit a baseball either. He said, what you don't realize is when you're here with all these variables and all these decisions, and in an airplane, it's life or death if you make a mistake. He said, the pressure is incredible unless you've been doing it for a long time and you really know what you're doing. I got a whole different appreciation for pilots after that, and frankly, for my fellow CEOs. Because if you're really good at this, you make it look easy. And everybody who works for you says, I could do that. Give it a shot. If you don't use these disciplines, no matter how talented you are, how experienced you are, very hard to be sustainably successful as a CEO. So, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Time for a question, really fast. If anybody has a question for Mark, Sue?
Yes, sir.
Just wanted you to know, a fellow Kellogg graduate, thank you.
Oh boy, I'm from Evanston.
Everything you just said, we applied to our business transition from the end of 21 to current. We took a financial structure that looked like a Hershey Kiss and turned it into a drinking straw. And we scale our business entirely through outsourced relationships and collaborations and partnerships. It 100% has allowed us to scale our business. We're 2Xing this year. It works.
So you did all of this.
All of it.
Good for you. What business?
Packaging and displays.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Anybody else got a question?
So if you're able to essentially acquire investment, without either giving up equity or doing a loan-based model, do you take it, or if you don't need it, you don't need it?
That's a great question. So the thing is, you always need more capital than you think you know. Always. Businesses are always harder to build. When I took Net Zero public, I was the original chairman and CEO of Net Zero. We had 20 people, we had $3.5 million in revenue, took it public and raised $184 million at a $3 billion valuation with $3.5 million of trailing quarterly revenue. You can't make this up. And people said sell 5% of the company in your IPO, and then 6 months later do a follow-on secondary to much higher valuation. I was like, look, I'm not a kid CEO. I've been doing this a long time. I'm going to attach a gas truck to my car. Because back then, when everybody was going public, imagine driving from LA to Vegas and imagining the capital markets where there's a gas station every mile. So why fill up with expensive gas in Los Angeles, put in a quarter of a tank, and then when you're out in the middle of nowhere on the way to Vegas, stop for cheap gas? Well, guess what happened? All the gas stations closed. And all those companies went bankrupt because they ran out of money. So I said, not happening to me. So I overraise. So my feeling is, don't be a pig about your equity, because owning 100% of nothing is nothing. And people who make real money in this world are people who live to fight the fight. So if you're going to raise capital, raise more than you think you need. Don't worry about your dilution unless you're losing control. And if you're going to lose control, get paid a premium for giving up control. But you typically find people under raise because they are equity pigs. They are so protective of their equity, and they end up owning a bigger percentage of a company that's undercapitalized and worth less. That's why the term worthless exists.
Last
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, when does your book come out?
I'm working on it. I'm not sure. All of the stuff is pretty much done. I just have to compile it and put it together. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing that.
Very awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys.
In the fast-paced world of retail, technology can be a transformative force, reshaping the way businesses operate and consumers shop. Is your retail organization leveraging technology to its top capabilities? Evolving your technology capabilities can help enhance visibility into your business, decrease risk of increasing cybersecurity incidents, accelerate productivity with artificial intelligence, and more. Deeply immersed in the consumer products industry, Baker Tilly professionals bring customized solutions that can help you find the right technology fit. Visit bakertilly.com to learn more.